Right. I did these scans on the diplomatic intellect, and I'll let people take that in. So you've taken that in. I'll just hold that there, and then I will go through on the other scans, and then I'll move it down. And feel free to comment.
Yes. Okay. Just. Well, I mean, as I was agreeing with, I don't know if anyone else has finished reading.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yes. Fair enough. I made an assumption there. I shouldn't have. Amber, have you finished reading that section?
Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah. I have to assume that we've seen it. 2 out of 3. Good. Right, and then a bit about Gandhi.
Well, I don't think Gandhi was an INFJ. Just.
Ooh. Do you think he was INFP?
Yes. More likely. Type 9 INFP. And the other side I was focused. What do you think Eleanor Roosevelt was?
I don't know about. I don't know enough about her, apart from the fact that I don't know. It's just that they came from that tradition of progressivism, and there's a lot of context that needs to be looked at, and it's better. You're in a better position to judge her type.
I don't know much about it, but I do know that Franklin's usually typed as ESTP. So I'm just wondering if that was like duality or something.
I mean, I can buy her being an NF or an SJ. I mean, but it's like,
yeah.
Well, if I remember correctly, the quotes from her that I remember, they seem very positivist and sort of toward ESFJ.
All right. Yeah, it's possible.
I gotta say, that is a good speech there. That is a good speech.
Yeah. Well, conflicts and controversies unsettle them, disputes and debates set them on edge. It really depends. Like, well, I suppose it's like uncontroversial debates or less controversial debates, but you know, that inferior SE kind of wants a battle.
But also as well, I mean, I know but you know, if imagine what you would be like, Jonathan, if you actually were in Glasgow with extra, or somebody, or I make the comparison again with someone from New York in a particular area of New York versus. I can give you a counter example of where it's like almost. So Jesse Ensley She fits the INTJ pattern. She's also talked about on her channel Dizzy Dolly 7 about being diagnosed with Asperger's, but she also talks about the ability to be able to socialize. And she talks about like she has like the energy to sort of like socialize in a sort of like SFJ mode for about an hour, half an hour to an hour, because like she grew up in like the country club in say Louisiana, and so she learnt all of like the social etiquette and stuff. And then like she did an impression of her doing it as like the nice southern lady that can do like the big, but she said she can only keep it up for like 30 minutes. And so whereas if you'd have put say an INTJ, well, I suppose it's like when you hear Woody Allen, like have you ever seen Annie Hall, Jonathan?
No.
Oh, well, he talks about the differences between New York, which seems like very FI honest, and comparing that with Hollywood and California, which is seems more FE, more insincere. And so there are these like local cultural differences that you can get.
Yeah, FE is not insincere. FE is just polite.
I know that. It's just that I'm sort of like putting it in the starkest terms, the way he sees it.
Maybe if it means row FE or tertiary FE.
Right, so what we got next? Then we start getting in. This is a good bit. Interest, practice, skill. Hopefully that's big enough for folks. This is something I want to look at in future. Is apparently David Keirsey Sr.'s PhD was actually into the nature of intelligence, and he like came to the conclusion that there were like these diplomatic roles, and that it's not just a case of abstract intelligence, because if you use that definition, it's a heavily biased towards NTs and NFs.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And NFs. It's just like an intelligence, because it's hard to measure other things. Like in IQ tests, they pretty much can only measure logico-mathematical, the linguistic, and the visuospatial. It doesn't measure like interpersonal intelligence and intrapersonal intelligence and the musical and all these different other aspects. And so intelligent roles, and so Keirsey's system, and I can see a little bit of an influence on Victor, where Victor has the social mission of the types, and where it's like, and he's, I think towards the end of Please Understand Me Too, he writes, my aim is not to write what the types have in mind, but to work out what they are best at, what their intelligent roles are, and how they can best apply their intelligence. And it's almost as if, I think Keirsey saw 4 personalities, and what we would call the types were the role variants. Were like essentially he saw 4. So just like Enneagram saw 9 basic motivations, he saw 4 basic motivations, and then it was almost as if the subtypes, the subvariances were like the role variants, and then the role variant was a combination of someone's natural inclination and just the roles that they are have enacted, and you get that feedback loop between nature and nurture, where someone who's naturally more inclined to be, say, outgoing, the more they do that kind of thing, the better they become at it. And I suppose you can see this more if you've known a person, say, for 20 years or 10 years, and you can see how that person has changed. They're the same type, but they've changed just through their experience. Then you can have a better just understanding of the interplay between type and experience. Right. Any comments on this bit? Right, okay, I'll just move it up a touch before we get. This is just general role variant theory stuff from Keirsey. Oh yes, and they asked David Mark Keirsey, his son. He says like the ones in the middle, they're about the same, because there's something. The idea is that there's something in common. So NFs are abstract, and so they have the abstraction in common with NTs, so they can do that. And they have, with SJs, they have the cooperative nature in common with SJs. And the least they have in common with are SPs. But now of course that works for the NFPs, but it doesn't work for the NFJs, because the NFJs have functional commonalities with the STPs. But what I could do is, this would be a good time to bring in Amber. Could you talk a little bit about what you think of STPs and like your experience of them? Because
I find to be
right, yeah, you're breaking up a bit, Amber. If Jonathan, if you could,
very much.
oh, you've come back a bit now. If you say that again, Amber.
She froze.
Yeah, I think is she frozen?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. It might be a case of.
Oh, she's back.
Oh, she's back. So, Amber, if you
Maybe
say what you think of STPs, and
We never heard you, so.
yeah,
I find them usually to be really blunt and rude, and I don't care for them very much. They don't seem to really care very much for their consequences of their actions or the people around them. And I'm a lot more big into respecting the people that I'm with and thinking about the end consequence. So I find I don't get along very well with them.
now,
It really depends on the level you communicate with them, because on the social level, actually duals are very critical of one another. They just cannot understand how this person can function. But on an intellectual level, they may be very useful for one another and kind of give each other a fresh perspective. So I have a lot of fascination with all the PI types, all four of them, because they seem to have a way with new terminology or naming things. They are very good at expressing their thoughts exactly as it is, because I always feel like I'm cramping words, or I use words not exactly as they are intended to use. So I feel a little bit tongue-tied, and I sense this as a weakness. And they are very, all TI types are very creative and very generous with words. They try to tailor their speech so you could understand them. unlike, for instance, INFP or ISFP, who would sometimes kind of take advantage of you, or use words that you don't understand and bring you down. So all TI types are very comfortable in that respect, including the sensor. They're exactly the same way in that respect.
Maria, do you think it's a case that it's your experience of STPs is being drawn towards like the more, it's like the developed kind of STPs, it's like if you're looking at like Enneagram type 8, where it's like when they're like really well developed and just like nicer people, and like they have more like of those of like, it's more like the heroic qualities that is it that kind of STP that you're drawn to? Whereas the way Victor and I see them, it's like we're a little bit wary of the STPs.
Well, it really depends on what you focus your communication on, because I may myself have issues when I have to interact or deal with them, and on a social level I may dislike them.
Right.
But I always like to look and listen, because actually observing a person, their modus operandi is also on the information level. When you see people working, for instance, you can see a lot of interesting things. I remember seeing an ESTP just, you know, doing odd jobs around the market, like straightening out vegetables on the stand, and the way they do it, it's like, you know, a surgeon works and teaches very carefully.
Oh, Maria, do you agree with the view that EJR&D once said that a lot of surgeons are ESTPs? Do you agree with that?
Yes, I think there's a lot of ESTP surgeons, maybe somewhat more so than ESFP, for instance. But all management SE tend to work in like surgery or traumatology or pathology, somewhere where you need very good eye and eye-hand coordination, stuff like that.
Yeah, and not just that, it's the pressure, the immense pressure.
Yes, actually, when I asked an ESTP why he became a surgeon, he said that you need a very quick mind to do surgery, and he.
Yeah. Right, and it's also why you get some of these tales of like, well, I've got to say it, some surgeons having a god complex. So maybe there's a little bit of a, you know, where you get the good side, bad side of the ESTP. And it's also, it goes to, there was that wonderful series by Dr. Kevin, oh, his name escapes me, he wrote The Good Psychopath. And he gave examples of the psychopathic scale. And he said how actually a lot of surgeons would score highly on that scale, and really what it was is just an extroverted sensing scale, and it was like with different degrees of and it showed how James Bond would score highly on the psychopathic scale, but really it's just like the extroverted Dr. Kevin Dutton. Kevin Dutton. Yeah.
Well, if you deal with matters of life and death on a regular basis, it kind of numbs you a little bit, and you have a natural advantage if you're naturally numb.
Yeah. So what he did, Maria, was, and everyone, that he did Psychopath Night on Channel 4, a channel in the UK, and he had a huge questionnaire, and he found out that those people that scored highest on the psychopathic spectrum were the ones most likely to do a bungee jump. And then he interviewed these two women who scored lowest. And it was like, INFP, they looked completely INFP glasses. They asked them if they do the bungee jump, and they were like, no way. And so it was like, but the top two was like, it was a woman of I would say, Indian subcontinent extraction and a man. And it was like they displayed the qualities of like being just calm under pressure, being such an important trait.
See, the INFP I'm thinking of, I think he would do a bungee jump. Like, do you think I would do a bungee jump?
Well, you never know with that suggestive extroverted sensing. It is possible.
Yeah. No, Hannah.
What exactly is bungee jumping?
You don't know what bungee jumping is? Bungee jumping is when you tie a rope to your feet and you jump off a wall.
Well, it's more of a big elastic band so that you spring back, not just a rope. Yeah. And you have to sign a form, in case you die or anything goes wrong. So that's a little big flashing red light for me. So we've had... Also, what we can say is Maria's father is ESTP. He fits that pattern and she likes her father. So, Jonathan, why do you like ESTPs? Even though apparently they're completely different from NFs. They're not abstract in their language and they're not cooperative. So, why do you like them?
Well, I'm not sure of any ESTPs that I know. I mean, I think of some that I probably knew years ago, and I don't know, I was just kind of comfortable around them in terms of, or maybe a bit jealous of their skill and physicality and stuff. And it was a martial arts club I'm thinking of, lots of SPs there, and I wasn't very good at it, but I liked just I don't know, I just generally got on well with them.
And so there we go, folks. I mean, like, so you can have like deductive reasoning like this, where it's like you can say NFs are the opposites of SPs. So like, as Keirsey shows, and that does work. There's some truth to that. So for instance, when you contrast ESTP and INFP, it's almost like they're doubly opposite because they're opposites in Keirsey theory as well, those two types. So we can move on to the next page of this bit on the role variants. We get a little bit more theory, and then we'll get back to the profile. Oh yes, the color code here is SJ is blue, NT is in purple, NF's in, as you can see, NF's in green, stuff like that. And then here, compare quadra values stuff.
Just for a second, one thing I wanted to point out about STPs is the they are NJs like beta and NFJs probably see their emotional side, which is somewhat childlike, and they may respond to that also.
Yeah.
And one of the benefits of knowing about Enneagram is that we know about different levels of development. And a lot of ESTPs are 8s. And 8s can go towards 2 and become the superhero.
Oh, Ben, I forgot to say I was only going to be here till around 9-ish.
Okay.
So 15-20 minutes I'll give you.
Okay. Right, thanks for the heads up.
Sorry for not mentioning this.
Okay, here we go. The role variance idea. And so just sort of like physical, so this is like the things that they are most, their roles, their sort of social roles that they're most, that would be most emblematic of their functional talents, I suppose we could say.
Mentor, well, that's my tri-type. Educating, developing, guiding, what? Yeah, I would say they're generally okay. I don't know if, not sure how comfortable I'd be in a job as some of these, but There's a role play.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, people can just play these roles just naturally, even if it's not professionally.
Mm.
I mean, you do tend to get. I mean, the NFPs do tend to advocate things. I mean, just in their natural approach, when you get them, you see the NFPs tend to advocate things more, and the NFJs tend to be more towards mentoring people and helping them out. And as you can see, the mentor that is more outgoing will naturally be able to fulfill the role of teacher than someone who is more withdrawn. Say someone like Amber, who's more would be able to enact the counselling role, the guiding role, more one-to-one. But these are this is just the level of role enactment rather than the actual person. Because like I said, it's a combination of the person and the role they play. Right, diplomatic mentors. Let me just go up a bit here. Oh. Okay, so yeah, this is the NFJs. All right, and then he gives the positive and negative of that. And of course, the mentors correlate somewhat with beta quadra values, and the mediators correlate somewhat with delta quadra values. I mean, ultimately, if you're guiding other people, there's a little bit of extroverted sense in there.
If you say so.
But the point of, oh, I think I know what's best for you. I see your potential.
I would attribute it to extroverted feeling rather.
Yeah, me too.
I tend to, like, most of the time I tend to draw equal FE to like good versus bad, the idea of good, and generally the emotional charge of something, positive or negative, and you need that charge to lead.
I mean,
unlike FI, which is like deeply personal, it has to do with personal values. FE is the sort of emotional semantics. Like every phenomenon, everything has emotional charge in the society view. So when you know how valuable things are for the society right now, you can address that and lead somebody toward what is better.
Yeah, I just think that's.
Yeah, right.
Yep. So we've got hair, and there we go. Just the contrast between. Oh yeah, and I just thought that was like tandem use of FE and TI when it's talking there about the when it gave the example there of the teacher of the ENFJ. And I think even Victor calls the ENFJ. I think he calls it the mentor, the ENFJ.
Yes. There's among sociologists, there's at least Victor for a while had an idea that most people who influence the humanity are some kind of ENFJ who pretended to be another type or didn't pretend.
Oh yes, there's that thing that Victor tended to type people as ENFJ.
Well, I understand that he's sort of over that, but he still thinks that in cultural realm, INTJs and ENFJs sort of rule like run the show.
Yeah, I think maybe it's just that society, people learn to act in that way, because it's like, so for example, NLP is like trying to teach people to be like Tony Robbins, who is an ENFJ, I reckon, and he's also teaching this like NLP type system of like trying to be charismatic and focusing on other people and stuff. But I won't go too much into that, we're short on time. But do you think that's so Amber, do you connect with this bit here where it says counsellors and sort of like the description? Oh.
She froze, or
I can switch it. I can try switching it on. Yeah, you can use Control D to switch the mic on and off. But I'll ask you, Jonathan, what do you think about that? Do you think that's a good...
It's a decent basic description.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, and looking at ENFJ and comparing it to socionics, and obviously no, in socionics it's FE minus, and they're much more edgy and more negative, so it's...
Although Maria reminds me that the higher a function up,
Yeah.
is that the more they can use both sides of it. So, for example, when it's INTJ, that has FE minus in its model, and so that's like really low down. And so when they show emotion, it tends to be of the negative type. And of course, if you compare the other, what is it, SLI? They're break FE, but they're break SE plus. Sorry, break FE plus. So it's a different kind of break FE, and theirs is like, it's basically not showing much emotion with
No. Yeah. So Amber, go ahead.
Yes.
The stuff about counselors and the mentors and having insight into emotional needs of others. I feel like that's true. But if I can ask you a question, just while you guys are here, I feel like I don't have that for myself. Like I have a really easy time knowing what other people feel and how to help them, but I have a really hard time processing my own emotions and understanding them and working through them.
Yeah.
When I find it really easy to do that with other people.
Yeah, that's extrovert. That's extroverted feeling. So ENFJs are more like that. FI types are usually more aware of their own feelings, and they'll relate to others by relating to themselves first. So, like if you were INFP, you'd be a bit more aware of how you feel, and you'd see how you try and relate to other people through how you feel or how you would feel in their position and so on. But if you're an INFJ, you're more aware of other people's feelings in general. That makes sense.
Can I say something? According to socionics, there's also a difference between subtypes. For instance, if you have a subtype which is low on NI, you will be less able to use both sides of it. For instance, I'm creative subtype, and I'm pretty horrible at NI minus. It's about the worst thing I can do. I mean, predicting the negative or whatever you call it. It's something that other INFJs are much better, as I noticed. Better at, as I noticed.
Is it because in the case of the oh yeah, you said that you noticed that other INFJs are better at it. I was just wondering if it's because for INFJs maybe like trying to access NI minus, it's like it sort of pushes them in towards TE realm of thinking about, oh, what can go wrong, and then thinking about practical solutions, deal with that, and you know, maybe it could be a bit of that. But I did hear you say towards the tail end that you've noticed other INFJs being able to access the NI minus a bit better. So here we have an overview of the NFPs, just for comparison. In terms of their diplomatic roles.
It's just, I heard a lot about, for instance, I heard from other people who know socionics that other INFJs are more naturally suspicious and they tend to see bad things coming a lot more than I do. And that actually, sometimes it makes communication with them more difficult than with me. I'm sort of a more easygoing INFJ. Because I don't worry about all the negative stuff that may happen.
Mm.
I don't think.
Okay.
Jonathan, how do you, are you pretty similar to Maria there, Jonathan? Or do you worry about negative things?
I wouldn't say I worry about things, but I tend to notice things like that. And I wouldn't say I'm just a negative. I can see the positive and the negative at times. Depends on the situation. Sometimes people make a huge deal about something I don't think is going to be that bad. Other times they are very excited or neutral about things that I think is going to be terrible or disastrous. I can't think of examples right now, but yeah, I would say that I'm quite good at predicting how things are going to go when I'm, at least when I'm given a chance to step back from it. Like, I find the more involved I am, the more murky my vision becomes. But that's...
Is that one of those situations where that expression comes in, you can't see the forest for the trees?
Yeah. Yeah, the more I get involved in the forest, the more trees I'll see rather than the whole thing.
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm... Yeah, like I think if I wasn't involved in or observing so many debates in the presidential election, not just the television debates, but the debates on the internet of all the people there, I would have seen Trump's victory coming much more easily, just because of the pattern of Democrat Republican of the last few decades.
Yeah, it was pretty close, and it was the problem. Anyway, the polling has been slightly inaccurate over, but we can look at that do a separate hangout on that. But so here, folks, I'll put FE. People are putting thinking FE with the ENFP. Well, it's an unvalued function, but it's a strong function for ENFPs. Just look at an ENFP. They express a lot of emotion. They are using FE. They are facially expressive. They are using it, just like ESFPs use it. They're using emotional expressivity, but they don't value it for its own sake. They're using it to serve something else. And the ENFP uses it to serve the cause, to champion the cause. The ESFP is using FE for other reasons.
Right.
Yeah, I see that in undeveloped cases, it's the use like the FE is mainly in service of the base functions. So you pretty much have to be on top of things, and you use everything you can to mostly like emotional manipulation.
Ooh, yeah. And then here, I mean, we get a contrast with Amber, because usually the INFJs, a lot of INFJs, you know, they'll look at their quasi-identical type and wonder, oh, which aspects of my quasi-identical do I fit? And again, this is looking more at the behavior, the role that INFPs tend to enact.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go now. Sorry.
Okay, Jonathan, I'm sorry you have to go.
Sorry.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
And I suppose whilst Maria is with us, I can ask her, do you think that does fit the R function there? You know, what I've highlighted in green. Seems to fit.
Well, at least, yeah, at least they do attempt that.
Mm. No.
Well, I can say that sometimes I find that I teach family members to love each other better.
Mm.
To kind of, yeah, help them survive together by, you know, understanding each other more.
Yeah. So Amber, any comments on this about INFPs, or like bits of this that you actually connect with that are similar to you? Because as you know, it's a pattern. Like, there's an INFJ pattern, there's an INFP pattern, and people can see parts of other patterns in them.
What were you asking? I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, I was just asking, is there any part of this that you connect with?
Well, some stuff like mending relationships between people, depending on what it is, if it's like family or close personal friends, because I like to keep things like, I like my environment to be like balanced and harmony, right? So I don't like conflict going on around me all the time. So that mending relationships, it's pretty good.
Now, this next bit of the text shows how, like, say an INFJ can do those different kinds of things. So it compares the roles. So, for instance, sometimes an INFJ has to act like a healer. Sometimes, so it's like life forces people into these different roles. And so,
well, people are going to pick bits from everywhere, right? You can't just be one certain thing from one certain box every single second of your life, right?
Oh yeah. Do you want to say a bit more about that? Sort of like, now you're on a roll. If you say a bit more about that.
Me?
Yeah. I just thought it was interesting. It's like this idea that you were saying there, people doing little different bits. If you like, give an example, or.
Well, I think one thing that goes wrong, I don't know, with typing is like how you were saying your type is not
Right, so she's broken off a bit there, folks. So what I'll do is I'll say here is that, so we've got here, every idealist plays these 4 roles well, but no one idealist plays them equally well. And so we've got the idea here that, so, oh, you're coming back a little bit. What I'll do is, I actually need that bit there because it's actually getting in the way. Get rid of this bit there.
I try, but for some reason, I with this kind of stuff. And that way, if you're going to take something.
Oh, now you've come back. Could you say that again, Amber? Oh, I can't hear you. Let's go back to the... Oh yeah, now... You are? Oh, it looks like your microphone's off. Is that off? No, it's... Oh, now you're back, I think. Yeah, but could you say that again, please?
The whole thing?
Yes, the whole thing. I'm sure it was golden.
It wasn't. It was just a bunch of mumbles.
Oh, please indulge me. I'm sure it was good because it's like this idea of like, I suppose, if you just give me a bit, please. Because I think
something I've noticed it with like groups and typing of people.
Yeah.
Once they realize they're a type, it's like they try to mold exactly to that type.
Yeah.
Instead of using that type, what they can learn about that type as a tool for personal growth. Right?
Yes.
They try and mold themselves to that exact type, which there's no way that you can ever possibly be, and that's like the worst thing you can do for your personal growth because you can't ever fit into one box like that.
Yeah, and
you're always going to be pulling parts from everywhere else. Plus, your environment and all the people around you are going to have a constant impact on you too.
Yeah, it's those people who are like, you can tell that they're searching for an identity, and that the type has become their identity, and it's like, you know, you're more than your type. The type is just at most, and as Dario said, it's at most it's 50% of you. It's all of these other things. You know, don't get confused between identity and achievement. It's like when somebody gets the type result, INTJ. Yes, you got the INTJ result. Well done. You know, now what can you do with it? How can you address some problems, some issues that you might have, so certain challenges? And you know, if you realize if you have certain challenges, and it's like, okay, type identify with that is a challenge for them, so I can work on it, but I can't expect to become, you know, the best at this certain thing. And part of this is that it's easier. So Keirsey's theory is that, so we've got here for the roles that, so Councillor INFJ, that they could play the role of teacher.
Yeah.
So someone who's naturally an INFJ, they can sort of like, and I think Crystal has talked about this, where she sort of like forced herself to be a little bit more outgoing to play the role of teacher. And Maria has done this as well. Maria has enacted the role of teacher when she's like had these arts classes and things. Do you want to say a bit about that, Maria? Like when you've sort of like enacted the role almost of ENFJ for an afternoon? Or maybe it's not that, maybe it's a different kind of shift. I don't know. But okay. But have you ever, do you ever think that you've enacted the sort of like gone into like and acted a little bit like an ENFJ, Amber?
I'm sure I'm pulled from many different things over my life.
Yeah. Oh. Right there. But I suppose the overall theory is that because these 4 types are all NFs, it's easier for the INFJ to act like these other types because they're within the same temperament, they're all NFs, than it is to act like certain other types. That's part of it, at least when it comes to the enacting of intelligent roles.
Yeah.
Because the NFJs are good at mentoring, the NFPs are good at mediating. They can be good at other things, but naturally, functionally, they're drawn towards those things. Oh, here we go. Oh, here we go. This is an interesting point. Oh, am I on the right box? I've always got to make sure I'm on the right box. Right. Notice that teachers, ENFJs, are the exact opposite of the healers, INFPs, in likely diplomatic development. And also they have the opposite interaction style. So Linda Behrens calls this in charge, and David Keirsey Sr. called it initiating. Just as counselors, so because they are directive and they're outgoing, and the INFPs are what did I call it? It's I forgot what the term is. There's directive and informing. So it's a bit like I am. It's like, oh, you could do this, you could do that, maybe. It's just a suggestion, rather than like being directive. Thus, teachers are usually able to help. Here we go. So this is the bit that connects directly with extroverted sensing. Thus, teachers are usually able to help even resistant students learn what they need to do or know, while they are less inclined to heal people in their times of conflict. So a little bit of overlap there between function theory, where you've got ENFJs with launcher extroverted sensing and more directive. They'll learn resistant students, and INFPs, it's harder for them because INFPs in Socionica are SE break. Right. And oh yes, I'll think about ask Holly in Google Hangout that in the future about that, because Holly fits the ENFJ pattern. Right. The next one is this is the last little bit of it, and then we'll get back to the profile. Oh yes, weak extroverted sensing in FI and X, so that's INFPs, and they're called accommodators. I'm also an accommodator. Now, of course, though, with Socionics DCNH, interaction style will vary by subtype slightly. So, for instance, a dominant subtype is probably more likely to be in charge than other subtypes. Right. So, for instance, so healers, they're the INFPs, who are likely to leave no stone unturned in making others whole. Because like what they're good at, the INFP, they want to find out about people, working one-on-one, and while being rather hesitant to take on a group of learners, especially if resistant to learning. And that makes sense. Like an ENFJ, they're more used to dealing with large groups. They have the social skills developed over many years of dealing even with resistant people, and that's harder for an INFP to do that, to suddenly go out of their shell and start acting a bit more like an ENFJ. Oh, here we go. I've put there, I think the purple is NI. It's also the case that counselors are eager to guide those in need of it for long periods of time. Again, NI is about the guiding, seeing the development, seeing the over time. and with untiring effort, but less eager to serve as a champion for someone with a burning cause. I don't know, maybe they've just not got the energy. Maybe that's an energy thing. Maybe that's an energy thing for INFJs.
You just came back. I couldn't hear what you were saying.
I was just saying, I was just wondering if that's an energy thing. I was just trying and come up for a point of connection with socionics. Because where he's put there is the case that counsellors will guide someone in need of it over a long period of time, but they're less eager to serve as a champion for someone with a burning cause. So I suppose that means INFJs haven't really got the energy to act like an ENFP. Because that ENFPs have a ton of energy. And
yeah.
And if they're
I burn out pretty easily.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the things that in the socionics we have, like the NI and SI DOMs are low energy types. And then they need to like conserve their energy, get their energy back. Lastly, champions, so that's ENFPs, with their contagious enthusiasm, are likely to be the best at all at fighting for causes, though not the best at giving counsel.
Well, if you take, for instance, a cause of, ethical treatment of animals, you may realize that for a certain person, at this point in his life, being a vegetarian is good, and tomorrow it may be bad. We need to take a dynamic approach. While the statics, it's either good or bad.
Yeah, I mean, I used to be a vegetarian for a long time. And then, I found out, I want to put muscle on. I need the protein. So, and actually, Hannah mentioned something similar in that she was a vegetarian for a long time, but she felt that because that she felt she was getting too thin, that she needed to eat meat, and that was a big ethical struggle for her. And we actually mentioned that in one of the hangouts I've done with Hannah. However, even with their long and short suits, idealists will tend to practice and thus will develop any one of these 4 diplomatic skills well above those of strategic, logistical, and tactical skills developed by the other temperaments. Detailed portraits of the 4 idealist role variants can be found at the end of this chapter. Yes. And we're going to go back to that now.